AM here. So I initially wanted to just kind of have a podcast where I was talking about certain topics, just because I believe in like discussing all things because I'm not politically correct and I tend to have no filter. Um, but I do listen to other people's stories and versions of their side of it and their take on it. And I like to try to get other people's perspective, so to speak. And I also like to give my opinion, and my opinion is my opinion unless you can prove me otherwise. And I'm a big person on facts and like figures, and because I'm a mathematician, a scientist, and a historian, and so did a lot of writing papers, and I even represented myself in legal trials. And so, um, with that being said, I just kind of dove in this. I created a Reddit community several days ago. It's called Crime in the AM, which, huh, hee hee ha ha. I tend to have cutesy little things like that just because I think it's sarcastic and funny at the same time because I'm weird. But nonetheless, I got into crime, the true crime thing, because of this particular case. And so the case that I'm speaking of in particular is the case that involves the four college kids who were murdered in their home outside the campus, stabbed to death in their sleep, in fact, on November 13th of 2022. Um, they were roughly at the ages of 20 and 21. Um, and this has been quite the case for the last 6 to 7 weeks. I'll tell you that much. And the information that has been out there has been crazy. And the thing is, the online sleuths were given so much misinformation at the time, not just amongst themselves, but the media, and not only that, but law enforcement, because a lot of the time they were like saying things that were they'd have to clarify again, and it was just a little wow. So I don't know. I just like started like because I think it's because of their social media and like I'm like a social media queen. Like I like can do social media investigations like you wouldn't believe. Like I can find out anything and everything off of social media, and I've tested it out. And like people come to me to find stuff out. I know that's crazy, but like I don't know. I just because I'm like on all social media platforms, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna like go through these people's pictures and I'm gonna try to figure this out. And yeah, so that's kind of like what happened. And so where we're at right now in this case is we went from having no suspects, no information, to now we have a suspect of this Brian Kohberger, who is suspected of killing these four college kids from the Idaho University. And he apparently was a PhD student at the Washington State University College, where he was also a teacher assistant, and he was staying there because he's originally from Pennsylvania. He's originally a resident from Pennsylvania. So we didn't get the whole story when they arrested him, which they arrested him on December the 30th of 2022. So just some days ago. And they didn't release the affidavit of probable cause until he was booked in the Lata County jail. So that is where we're at with this 19-page statement from a Brett Payne, which is apparently according to the document here, he's a corporal who is trained as a peace officer for over 4 years now. So basically, they begin talking about the scene. I'm just going to dive into this because it's so whoa. So we have this approximately on November the 13th at 4 p.m. The MPD and apparently Payne responded to the King Road to assist with scene security and processing a crime scene and the ISP scene. Smith and I entered the King Road residence through the bottom floor on the north side of the building. Smith and I then walked up to the second floor. He directed me down the hallway to the west bedroom on the second floor, which I later learned was Zana's. So that was Zana's room that he first went into. And apparently, just before this room, there was a bathroom on the south wall of the hallway. He could see a body later identified as Zana's on the floor. And that's exactly what he says. And says that she was deceased with wounds which appeared to have been caused by an edged weapon. He also seen in the room a male which was later identified as Ethan Chapin. And apparently the autopsy report provided by Spokane was death by sharp force objects, maybe? Go to the next page. Sharp force injuries. This apparently was the county medical examiner for Spokane, Washington. It was released on December the 15th. Payne then says he's followed Smith upstairs to the third floor of the residence. The third floor consisted of 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. The bedroom on the west side was later determined to be Kaylee's, and the other one on the other side was apparently Maddie's. It also discusses about the dog being found there when they initially responded, which was apparently Kaylee's and Jack's. Which he talks about that he interviewed him on the 13th and determined that they shared the dog. So based upon numerous interviews conducted by the officers and the ISP detectives and agents, he learned the following. On the evening of November 12th, Chapin and Zana are seen by BF, which is one of the surviving roommates. She's supposedly seen them at Sigma Chi on the University of Idaho at around 9 p.m. to roughly 1:45 November 13th. BF also estimated that at approximately 1:45, Ethan and Zana returned home to the King Road residence. And there we go. We have the confirmation, of course, that he was not living there. He was just a guest of Zana. Kaylee and Maddie were at a local bar around 10 p.m. from the footage provided by the Corner Club. That was the bar that they were at. And they stayed there till about 1:30 on November 13th. And at 1:30, apparently, Kaylee and Maddie are on video at the local food vendor called the Grub Truck, which streams its live stream. It's a food vendor truck on Twitch. Like I said, let's see, go back down. Then, apparently, a private party reported later on that Kaylee and Maddie at approximately 1:56 a.m. from downtown Moscow to the residence that they lived at. So apparently they had a riot at 1:56. Okay. So DM, which is the other surviving roommate, which by the way, DM and BF were supposedly on the first floor, and supposedly the killer just was on the second and third floor. But that is the case. But the thing is, DM and BF do not have. BF is apparently the only one with a bedroom downstairs, as we will see just in a minute that DM did not have a bedroom downstairs. So we go back to this. At 2 a.m., they both returned home. That was roughly Ethan, Zana, Maddie, and Kaylee. Okay. And they were supposedly at sleep by 4 a.m. Okay. With the exception of supposedly Zana, who received a DoorDash order at the residence at approximately 4 a.m., which apparently a DoorDash delivery driver reported this information to the police. DM, and this is the roommate that was supposed to have a bedroom next to BF's on the bottom floor, the first floor. So she stated that in this affidavit, she stated this statement here. She originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor. DM stated she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like Kaylee playing with a dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, which was located on the third floor. A short time later, DM said she heard who she thought was Kaylee say something to the effect of, "There's someone here." A review of records obtained from a forensic download of Zana's phone showed this could also have been Zana, as her cellular phone indicated she was likely awake and using the TikTok app at approximately 4:12 a.m. DM stated she looked out of her bedroom but did not see anything when she heard the comment about someone being in the house. DM stated she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Zaina's room. She then heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." At approximately 4:17, a security camera located at 1112 King Road. It's immediately to the northwest of 1122 King Road. Picked up distorted audio, and a loud thud, apparently. So, a dog can be also heard barking numerous times starting at 4:17 a.m. Apparently, the security camera is less than 50 feet from the west wall of Zaina's bedroom. DM said that she opened her door for the third time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. She described the figure as 5'10" or taller, male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. The male walked past DM as she stood in a frozen shock phase. The male walked towards the back sliding glass door. DM locked herself in the room after seeing the male, and DM did not state that she recognized the male. This leads investigators to believe that the murderer left the scene. Okay, so apparently she didn't know who this male was. The combination of DM's statements to law enforcement and the review of the evidence from BF and DM's phone and video of suspect video as described below leads investigators to believe the homicides occurred between 4 and 4:25 a.m. During the processing of the crime scene, they found a latent shoe print. This was located during the second processing of the crime scene by the ISP forensic team. They used a presumptive blood test and an amino-black, a protein stain that detects the presence of cellular material. The detected shoe print showed a diamond-shaped pattern, which is similar to Van's, supposedly outside the door of DM's bedroom. This is consistent with her statement regarding the suspect's travel. As part of the investigation, an extensive search, commonly referred to as law enforcement as a video canvas. So basically, they wanted to get video from the public of anything that happened that night. That's to kind of like pin the footage of morning hours of the particular car. I guess they were looking for. This is something they do to try to get a route. They had a collection of numerous surveillance videos from residents and businesses. They reviewed the camera footage with the white sedan, which is suspect vehicle 1, observed traveling westbound in the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive in Moscow at approximately 3:26 a.m. and westbound through Steiner Avenue at Idaho State Highway 95 at approximately 3:28. Which they specifically state that this particular vehicle did not display a front license plate, which is apparently important because in Idaho you have to have a front license plate. Everybody does. In Washington you do, but in Pennsylvania you don't. A review of footage from multiple videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood showed multiple sightings of suspect vehicle 1 starting at 3:29 and ending at 4:20 a.m. It says that he made 3 initial passes by the 1122 King Road residence and then left via Walenta Drive. Based off my experience as a patrol officer, this is a residential neighborhood with a very limited number of vehicles that travel in the area during the early morning hours. Apparently, there are only a few cars that enter and exit during this time frame, which apparently was one of his. He can be seen, suspect vehicle 1 can be seen entering the area on 4th time at about 4:04 a.m. It was driving eastbound on King Road, stopping and turning around in front of 500 Queen Road, number 52, and then driving back westbound on King Road. When suspect vehicle 1 is in front of the King Road resident, it appeared to unsuccessfully attempt to park or turn around in the road. The vehicle then continued to the intersection of Queen Road and King Road, where it can be seen completing a 3-point turn and then driving eastbound again down Queen Road. The suspect vehicle 1 is next seen departing the area of the King Road at approximately 4:20 at a high rate of speed. He was observed traveling southbound on Walenta Drive. And then they say that based upon the review of footage in the neighborhood that does not show suspect vehicle one during that time frame, I believe that suspect vehicle one likely exited the neighborhood at Palusa River Drive and Conestoga. I don't know how that's Conestoga Drive. I may be saying it wrong, but there it is. And if I say it wrong, I do apologize. I'm not very good with words. Um, Apparently, Palusa River Drive is at the southern edge of Moscow and proceeds into Whitman County. Eventually, the road leads to Pullman, Washington. Pullman, Washington is roughly 10 miles from Moscow, Idaho. Both Pullman and Moscow are small college towns, and they commonly travel back and forth between them. Then it talks about the releasing it to the FBI, and they had forensic people looking at the different models of cars. They first initially was wanting a 2011, 2013 Honda. Then, upon further review, I guess after turning it over to forensic examiners and stuff, they reviewed that they actually were looking for a model between 2011 and 2016. So apparently they was doing this in the meantime. So apparently, let's see here. The investigators were given access to video footage on the Washington State University campus located in Pullman. And a review of the video indicated that at approximately 2:44 on November 13th, a white sedan, which is consistent with the description of the white launcher, known as Suspect Vehicle 1, was observed on WSU surveillance cameras traveling north on Southeast Nevada Street at Northeast Stadium Way. At approximately 2:53, the white sedan was observed traveling southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman, Washington, towards SR 270, which SR 270 connects Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. And I will show you the connection. I may have to. So, if we move this around, which I will, this is just a route like to find to measure between places. So, why is it not working? Okay, since Google is being a okay, here we go. Now it's gonna work for me, huh? So apparently we have roughly a which I need to type in. I like to just do this to get an idea of the time frame because of the given timestamps here. Um, let's just type in WSU campus and see what it pulls up. Okay, so apparently from where he was at, roughly a 14 to 15 minute drive. If you go, which they said that he took the 270 route, which apparently this is not the 270. This is Old Moscow Road, I'm assuming. This is the 270 route here. Which, like I said, is roughly 14 minutes. Which, according to where he was, I think it was like about 16 minutes ish. So if you go back to the document here, 244 to 253. Wow. Anyways, I don't understand. I'm assuming that he was traveling back to where he was going, so that maybe that's why he was on the streets like he was. Um, but anyways, the camera footage from the Pullman, Washington, provided to the same FBI forensic examiner, and then they observed this. They identified this vehicle in Pullman as being the one that they're looking for. At approximately 5:25, the white sedan, consistent with the suspect vehicle one, was observed on five cameras in Pullman. The first camera recorded the white sedan at 1300 Johnson Road in Pullman. The white sedan was observed traveling northbound on Johnson Road. Johnson Road leads directly back to West Palooza Drive in Moscow, which intersects with Conestoga Drive. The white sedan was then observed turning north on Bishop Boulevard and northeast on SR 270. At approximately 5:27 a.m., the white Elantra was observed on cameras traveling northbound on Stadium Way at Nevada Street and Stadium Way at Grimes Way, Stadium Drive at Wilson Road, and Stadium Way at Cougar Way. And they have like a little description of the pathway, which, basically what I just showed you about 270 connecting. So, this area here is in different places. Okay. Um, this is apparently after the murders, though. Then we have another area of him leaving the WSU campus, and they have it kind of mapped out. On November 25th, the MPD asked the law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for the white Honda. And on the 29th at approximately 12:28 a.m., WSU police officer Daniel Tiengo, if I'm saying that wrong, I so apologize, found the white launcher registered at WSU, apparently by um, BK, Brian Kohberger. So, um, it was registered to him, and from his because he had just changed the registration on November the 18th to Washington. Okay, at one point the car was originally registered in Pennsylvania. Um, let's just do this. 63 Northeast Valley Road. Okay, I'm gonna move on and I'll go back to that. The same day at approximately 12:58, the WSU officer Curtis Whitman was looking for the white Elantra. Apparently, they located it at his apartment complex. They ran the car and it come back to the Washington tag. They reviewed his state license and photograph, and it indicates he was a white male, height of 6 and weighs 185. Additionally, the photograph of Kohberger shows that he was bushy eyebrows. Kohberger's physical description is consistent with the description of the male DM saw inside the King Road residence on November 13th, which I find mind-boggling because she said he was like 5'10", and then they're saying 6 feet, which I guess 2 inches doesn't make much of a difference. I don't know, roughly. Um, so I won't discredit her statement. I'm just saying it's like the way this is worded and all this mumbo jumbo. It's got people reading this would be so confused. Because I took me a minute to get this because I was freaking confused. Okay. So upon further investigation, including a review of Lotte County Sheriff's Department, the CPL, Duke's body cam, that they also had a mishap on August 21st at BK. He was detained due to a traffic stop. He was the sole occupant of those traffic stops, and then he also had a traffic stop. Um, in this particular traffic stop, I mean, he was able to provide his phone number to law enforcement, which they found that from the body camera footage, and they labeled this as 8458 phone. So this is how they was able to ping his number, and it was issued by AT&T, which he apparently from this document got in June of 2022. Okay, so then it says on October 14th, he was detained as part of a traffic stop by a WSU police officer. And upon review of that body cam footage, he was the sole occupant of the quote unquote vehicle suspect one, the 2015 Elantra, with the same Pennsylvania plate. So they're just trying to like provide enough evidence to situate that, hey, this is definitely the car we're looking for. This is definitely the indicators from different other traffic stops that had nothing to do with these murders definitely indicate that this is definitely our guy, definitely our car. They put it all together, and here we are. On the 8th, then we go back to November 18th of 2022. According to the WA state licensing, he had registered his white Elantra, like I was telling you guys, it was registered in Pennsylvania, and then so he registered into Washington State shortly after the murders, apparently, 5 days roughly. Based on my own experience and communication with Washington law enforcement, I know that Idaho and Washington require front and back license plates to be displayed. So he doesn't have to have that in Pennsylvania, so that's probably why he didn't think about it that particular county. So his car pretty much stood out because in Pennsylvania you don't have to have a front license plate, but in Idaho and Washington, all people who drive a car who are from there have to have a front license plate. So he had just registered his, okay, so he did not have a front license plate. So that would mean he was an out of state person who didn't necessarily know that you needed to have a front license plate, and his car stuck out like a sore thumb. That's what that totals up to be. They also believe that he was driving it on December the 13th in Loma, Colorado, apparently. It must have been whenever he was deciding to go from Washington to Pennsylvania during his holidays, I guess. It was then keyed on December the 15th by law enforcement in Hancock County, Indiana, and then on the 16th at approximately 2:26, surveillance video showed him in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. And it specifically says that the sole occupant of the vehicle was a white male whose description was consistent with Kohberger. But my thing is, he had his dad with him, so he wasn't the sole occupant. Maybe, and he couldn't have been on the day that he arrived, unless he was just riding around after he got home. But if he was just arriving to his house on December 16th, well, his dad was in there with him. So that's neither here nor there, I guess. I'm assuming that maybe they just surveillanced him when he was alone so that the dad wouldn't be involved. I don't know. Based on information provided on the WSU website, like I said, Kohberger was a PhD student in criminology at the WSU. And also, at one point, he apparently applied for internship with the Pullman Police Department in the fall of 2022. He wrote his essay. He had interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. BK also posted a Reddit survey which can be found by an open source internet search. And it was basically a survey that asked for participants to provide information and understand about committing crimes and killing people, which has been taken down, by the way. As a part of this investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants to determine cellular devices that utilize cellular towers in close proximity to the King Road residence. So this is where they pinged him, okay? So on November 13th, between 3 and 5, after determining that Kohberger was associated with the white launcher and that number, they were able to get a warrant, get the records, look at them, and it says that the 8458 phone in these returns did not show that number utilizing cellular tower resources in close proximity to the King Road resident between 3 and 5 a.m. Based on my training and experience, this is Brett Payne now talking about his training and experience in conversation with law enforcement officers that specialize in the utilization of cellular telephone records as part of investigations. Individuals can either leave their cell phone at different locations before committing a crime or turning it off, basically. They try to do this in an effort to apparently avoid law enforcement that is cellular device associated with them was in that particular area when a crime was committed. So basically, he's stating that based upon his experience, this usually happens. Um, on December 23rd, I applied for and was granted a search warrant for historical phone records from the 12th of November of 2022 at 12 a.m. to November 14th at 12 a.m. Um, on December the 23rd, pursuant to that search warrant, I received records for BK's phone, and they indicated that it was subscribed to him, of course, in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. And it was opened in June 23rd, 2022. They indicated cell site location information, which is referred to as CSLI. After receiving this information, they consulted with the FBI and the CAS team, which is like a cellular analysis survey team. They are ones who provide expert testimony, and they basically give their little bit of how many years that they have doing this and the information provided for them and they were authorized to determine the locations by the court. So we go now to the next paragraph here where we talk about these pings. On November 13th at approximately 2:42, the 8458 phone used resources that provide coverage from the Northeast Valley Road Pullman, which was his residence. At 2:47, it utilized resources that covers BK's home, leaving his residence, traveling south through Pullman, which apparently from the video footage, this is consistent with the movement of the white Elantra. At 2:47, this number stops reporting to the network, which is consistent with either the phone being in an area without cell coverage or the connection to the network is disabled, which that would mean putting it in airplane mode or turning it off. And then it says that his phone did not report to the network again until approximately 4:48 a.m., at which time it utilized cellular resources that provided coverage to Idaho State Highway 95 south of Moscow, near Blaine, Idaho, north of Genesee. And I hope that I'm saying that name right as well. Okay, between 4:50 and 5:26, the phone utilizes cellular resources that are consistent with his number on Idaho 95 to Genesee, Idaho, then traveling west towards Uniontown, Idaho, and then back into Pullman. At approximately 5:30, this phone uses resources that provide coverage to Pullman and it's consistent with the phone traveling back to BK's residence. And it says that the phone's movements are consistent with the movements of the footage from the whiteout launcher observed traveling north on Stadium Drive at approximately 5:27 a.m. Based on review of his number and estimated locations of travel, it is consistent with that of the whiteout launcher. So basically, his phone patterns and his travel patterns from the footage that they put together basically led them to believe, without a shadow of a doubt, this is him. His pings are consistent with these locations, with these addresses. And, nowadays technology is so advanced that they're pretty spot on. Further review then indicated that the phone utilized resources on November 13th that are consistent with the phone leaving the area of BK's residence at 9 a.m. and he went to Moscow. And then it used resources near the King Road between 9:12 and 9:21 a.m. Now, basically from 9 a.m. he left his home on November 13th. We're talking about hours after they had killed these kids, okay? And apparently he traveled to King Road. So they found him pinged there, okay? And when I say pinged, a cell phone, when you're traveling, is constantly bouncing off towers. So it will tell you when your phone's registered to the network. This is how they find you. This is how they can determine your last location if you go missing. Find my device, yada yada yada. Those things. And so these pings are pretty spot on. Um, it also utilized the phone utilized more resources traveling back to the area of his residence, which made him arrive to the area at approximately 9:32. So I guess he went to look to see what was going on. He didn't see anything. He came back, thought he was good, because see, they didn't call the police until 11:58 a.m., which I find to be quite odd. And I'll come back to that because this here, it means that this particular thing here means that uh, supposedly, allegedly, Brian was in the area hours after killing them, 4 to 5 hours later, because at 9 a.m. he'd supposedly killed them between the hours of, 4 something, okay? And he went back there at 9 o'clock, and he obviously just went there, took a glance, made a loop, and come back, because there's no way he could do these time frames in this amount of time, considering the travel, the space, that it takes 14 minutes to get from one location to the other, based upon Google's estimation of time. So this is iffy to me because of the fact that he just went there to ride around and look, and maybe he thought that he was safe because, hey, he didn't see anything happen. There was no police called. He figured by now police would have been swarmed that place. but he was able to go there and come right back. So that tells you that the police was not there, which, duh, we know this. I find that odd. So then they do this little thing about the picture of hit the travel route. So apparently, whenever he killed them and drove back home, okay, he went the longer way round, which that was what I did on my Google map. I did it out the route that they are situating that he took. Apparently, if you look, this is the route that they're talking about here. There's Janice. There's Blaine. So apparently, he took uh, that particular this long what loop. That's what that picture is basically from if you're looking at it from a Google Map perspective. Um, and then they were talking about there's Johnson, Blaine, Uniontown, Janice. So he basically then I have it starred here. That's the victim's home. So he went all the way around, which to go back, like to go this way, I guess he was trying to make sure he wasn't being followed. That's a 57-minute route, y'all. He went 57 minutes out of his way. Okay, that makes sense why he would come back so much later from the actual time that he was there. So it would actually kind of put him a little suspicious, considering that the cell phone pings picked him up these locations. Okay, and then for him to travel back to 270, but he initially traveled from his residence to the King residence by on this route here, which is the short route 270. After he killed them is when he traveled this long 57-minute route. So we'll go back to the affidavit now. And that's basically what that shows there. I just wanted you to get a better picture because you couldn't really see it on here because I had a hard time doing it until I figured it out. I played around with it a little bit. It says now that his phone did not connect to a cell phone tower that provides service to Moscow on November 14th. But investigators do not believe that the 8458 was in Moscow on that date. And it says since that last date of he went back to the murder scene one time, which was that morning. He went back to the murder scene on November 13th after he killed them. That's so important. He didn't go back there. He went back one time, did a quick run around, didn't see anything, thought he had it in the bag. He's about to bounce. That's all I can come up with. This is basically just another summary of his route, the morning hours, the lack of the suspicious activity between 247 here and 448. It's consistent with him attempting to conceal his location during the quadruple homicide that occurred at the King Road residence. Okay, um, they was able to get the search warrant. They was able to do a trace to see if that number was pinged at any point before the murders. It was also used to trace to see if he had stalked the victims prior to him killing them. They conducted surveillance on the King Road residence, and they was in contact with any of the victims associated before or after the alleged offense. Any locations that may contain evidence of the murders that occurred on November 13th and the location of his white launcher. So, on the 23rd, they received the historical records from the time the account was opened to the time of the murders. Maybe a day after, I'm not sure. And then they says that he was able to determine locations from the phone being open in June to up until November. It shows that his 8458 phone was utilizing cellular resources to the King Road residence at least 12 occasions prior to November 13th. All of these occasions, except for one, occurred in the late evening, early morning hours of their respective days. So apparently it was just one time that he went that did not, was not in the morning hours or late evening. On one of these occasions, roughly in August the 21st, 2022, this number utilized the cellular resources to King Road at approximately 10:34 to 11:35. And at approximately 11:37, he was stopped by Lottie County Sheriff, the police department, and let's see here. Apparently, it was consistent with the traffic stop during this time from Farm Road and Pullman Highway. So they can prove that it was him with his phone number because they did a traffic stop on him on August 21st, and he was utilizing the resources after they had found his, historical data. So that they used this particular statement here where he was stopped in August the 21st because it shows that his phone pinged the network when he was pulled over at this particular road here, Farm Road and Pullman Highway. This is another way to put no doubt that this dude definitely suspicious activity and it's possible that he's the killer. Then it says that the analysis of the cellular data provided showed that his number utilized cellular resources on November 13th, consistent with the phone traveling from Pullman to Lewiston, Idaho, via 195. At approximately 12:36 p.m., the phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverages to Kate's Cup or Joe Coffee stand located at 810 Fort Drive, Clarkston, Washington. So this was roughly at lunchtime on the day of the killings. Also, they took surveillance footage from the U.S. Chef store at Port Drive, Clarkston, Washington, which is actually adjacent to Kate's Cup, and it showed the water launcher, consistent with the suspect vehicle one. It drove past Kate's Cup of Joe at a time consistent with the cell data that pinged it. So the video footage lined up with their pings of the cellular data. At approximately 12:46, his phone utilized the data near Albertson's grocery store in Clarkston, Washington, and the surveillance footage there showed him exit the water launcher, consistent with the suspect vehicle one, at 12:49. He actually goes in the store. Cameras show him walking in the store, purchase unknown items, and then leave it at approximately 1:04. So must be his travel after. He was kind of all over the map after that day. I'm not sure what he was trying to do there, but maybe gather up his resources so he could get ready to leave. Additional analysis of the records of his phone indicated that between approximately 5:32 and 5:36, he utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Johnson, Idaho. It then stops reporting at 5:36 p.m. to 8:30, consistent with the 8458 phone being the area that the 8458 phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. So basically, they took another analysis of it, of a different time on that particular day. So apparently, he was in Johnson, Idaho at around 5:32 p.m. on that day that he killed the kids. Okay, so you got to remember, he killed them in the morning hours of November 13th, which was like 1 o'clock in the morning type hours. This is like that afternoon, okay? 5:32, 5:36. Well, they pinged him leaving that time frame after the homicides occurred. They pinged him in Johnson with his phone, okay? The route that he took, that long ass 1 hour route, basically, okay? And one of those routes was Johnson, Idaho. So now they have pinged him on the day of the murders in Johnson, Idaho, which consistent with his travel then. So it just puts him in these locations. He's been there once, he's there again. It just goes to show that, hey, we have further identified this as can't be nobody else but Brian Kohberger. On the 27th, they recovered trash from his family residence in Pennsylvania, and it was sent to the Idaho State Lab. And on the 28th, they reported the DNA profile obtained from the trash and obtained from the sheath, which, by the way, the sheath, which I should have mentioned, Kaylee and the sheath that they're talking about was a tan leather sheath that had K-bar with USMC and like I think a insignia of like the Marine Corps Eagle thing. That was laying by Maddie's body that he seen on the third floor. This officer did. with both of their bodies being in the bed with multiple stab wounds. So the only one in this particular one was the sheath was laying there beside Maddie. So he left the knife cover, basically, it's like a holder for a knife. He left it there by one of the bodies, which was Maddie's body. And apparently this is where they obtained DNA profile from him. And they took DNA profile from the trash. And they was able to pinpoint that it was 99.9998% that he was this dude, father. So they took the trash from Pennsylvania. His dad's DNA was taken from the trash, analyzed, compared to see if he was the dad of the suspected murderer. Boom, there was a match. Because they didn't have any DNA evidence on Brian. They didn't need it if his dad gave it to him because they obtained search warrants. So then this is when they issued the arrest warrant because he was charged with the murders of the victim. So there you go. So I will reiterate, I'll go back to what I was saying. I skipped over a part that I didn't realize that I did about Madison and Kaylee being found dead in the home, which they were on the third floor. They were killed inside their bed. On the second floor, apparently, Zana was laying on the floor. Ethan, we don't know where his body was. The officer just said in this affidavit that Ethan's body was in the room. So that kind of lines up with the statement that Zana apparently had defensive wounds, so she must have tried to stop the attack. I'm not sure. We don't really know. But it's odd that DM, which is one of the surviving roommates, was on the second floor and obviously did hear several things, and yet we find out about it till now. And I understand that she was in shock and everything, but why do we report these murders hours later at almost noon? Not to mention, at 11:58, a 911 call was made about an unconscious person. How did the Lotta County coroner get there in 2 minutes and identify the bodies as deceased? Which I find that to be odd. And all these documents from the Lotta County coroner's office, that can be found on the Moscow's website. So yeah, it's just some of it doesn't add up because initially law enforcement specifically stated that they didn't have anything, which I'm not saying that they have to give the public information, but they could just say we're not releasing anything on this case right now because it's an ongoing investigation. That's what they usually do. For them to just outright say that, for instance, the whole thing about the two girls, the two surviving roommates, were asleep and heard nothing. Well, law enforcement lied in several instances to the public, and then we wonder why they went crazy in getting information. So we don't understand that. Not to mention the fact that somewhere, somehow, DM's bedroom was determined to be on the first floor, which was not the case. In fact, her bedroom was on the second floor, right from Zana's. And for her to hear another male's voice that she obviously, from her description, was not able to recognize him, would have known that it probably wasn't Ethan's voice because she could hear what they were saying. So it's odd that she didn't find that odd and then just ran back in her room and stayed there for hours. Which, I mean, of course, she probably was scared to death. But when this dude walked out from the rooms, they found a footprint at her door, DM's door. It was a bloody footprint. He had blood all over him. So, there again, this story of this case just doesn't add up. I don't understand I'm still trying to put pieces together, but it's just looking really, really. I don't even know how to put it. And maybe I shouldn't attack the roommates. I'm not, because of course, if they're victims, of they're probably traumatized. I mean, I could totally understand that. I'm just not understanding. It's not what they said. It's what law enforcement did. People who are supposed to be in charge and be, letting the people feel safe as a whole, as a group. They look up to this, and they're sitting here giving these wild statements, so to speak. And in reality, they almost fuel the sleuths, and they fuel the people to make speculations, and they actually created a fire to burn for all kind of crazy stories because of the lack of information, for number one. Number two, not just that, but the lack of misinformation and then clarifying on several other reports. Then number three, we have the instance of saying one thing that a victim said, and then it turning out to be that was not the case, and we had a completely different story. And then we wonder why people don't really look up to law enforcement nowadays. Because in reality, you can't look up to them because you have expectations from a human who's obviously flawed. And whatever intentions they had, I don't see why they would play games and toy with the public unless there was some sort of agenda, which people would speculate it's because, they're just doing it because, they didn't want the guy to run off. The dude went back there to see if any police was happening, and then nothing happened, and then he was out, okay? And I'm sure he was thinking he was gold for a good while, because he went back and made a loop around that house at 9 o'clock in the morning, right after he killed him, okay? He didn't see nothing going on, no activity. He figured nobody was going to say nothing. Is he serious? And that's another thing that bothers me. He's a criminology major who drove his car, left his knife sheath there right by one of the bodies. Quinky dink, huh? Used his cell phone. He's supposed to be a criminology major who should know forensics type stuff and know that. I mean, I'm not a criminology major. I majored in microbiology and science, those type of sciences and immunology. I took a math, and I studied history. I even know this. It's, criminal 101. So the mistakes he made, just the intentions. It's gonna be quite the case. I find this to be very odd. And they just happen to find, out of all the blood spatters and all the blood, and uh, they found the DNA on a little bit of a button snap on a knife sheath that covers the blade of the knife when he's toting it. He wanted to be safe, huh? I find it odd. I find something not right about this case. I've said it many times to several of my members on the voice acting community and to a couple of my friends, um, and me and my sir talked about this, and so this case is mind-boggling. And yeah, I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm going to try to keep up with it. I'm going to keep investigating. I'm going to keep looking into documents, trying to find what I can, and you know, this is going to be some time on the news. So yeah, and I hope to see you guys back here the next time. We'll talk later. AM out.